Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining PwC's career webcast. This episode is on forensics. And a brief introduction to myself. Who am I? I'm Pierre Kilian. I'm a director in our forensic services practice here in Zurich, Switzerland. As you can probably hear by now, I am not Swiss. I am South African. I came here about 6-7 years ago. Before that, I worked extensively in Africa and also other parts of Europe. By training, I'm a chartered accountant, or as you call it here, a CPA. I'm also a lawyer, and I hold a master's degree in forensic accountancy. So I think the best way to describe it is I do a little bit of everything. And I think that is much the same way as how we go about our forensic practice, which I will introduce to you now. So forensics at a glance. So our practice really offers a wide range of forensic services, and we are focused in, let's say, 3 areas, and that is sort of prevention, detection, and response. And we often get the question, or I often get the question, what do you actually do? Because forensics is such a wide term, and with everyone watching shows such as CSI, I think it gets lost a little bit. So I think what I'll do is I'll walk you through the services, what we have, give you some examples, and then later on we get into the questions, but also the type of backgrounds and people that we are looking for to join us. So our first service is sort of fraud investigations and regulatory enforcement. And this is your classical frauds where you have a company that comes to us and they tell us, well, they've had record sales, but for some reason, they are not making profit and the cash is not showing up in the business. And then typically we will go to where they ask where the concerns are and look into it. And in cases like that, we often find that you have employees in the middle or customers or suppliers that are colluding to defraud the company. Our role then is really to gather the evidence and in such a way that it is legally admissible in court. Because often what happens is our clients want to open a criminal case, dismiss the employee, or get their damages back. So we need to, from day one, do things correctly for our clients to be successful in their outcome. Regulatory is more when, as the name say, when a government gets involved. For me, that's the best way to explain it. And if I take you to something such as sanctions, now where do we fit in sanctions? Now, if you would go a few years back, you had a lot of the banks in Europe had a problem with dealing with sanctioned countries or sanctioned entities. Our job is then really to collect all of the data in the bank. So every single email, every single file on every server, but also everything on paper. Get that into a digital format that we can search. And with our tools, we would go back and search sort of 10 years of transactions and communications and try and establish any links between the bank and sanctioned countries or persons. After that is finished, we do our report, and the reports usually go to regulators in the various countries. And the one that always gives the biggest fines that you will see is the Department of Justice in the US. And they would go through the report and the way that we did our work. And based on that and consultations with the bank throughout, issue fines or take other remedial actions. And these projects can typically run anything from 1 year to about 10 years. The next part is disputes analysis and litigation. This is really my part where I feel most at home, and that is arbitrations, civil litigations, and the like. Mediation I do as well. And it is really for me always when 2 parties are having a dispute about a contract, we come in and we put a number on the dispute. So if the tribunal or the judge finds for party A, this is the number, and for party B, this is the number. And that's where we come in to really support the tribunal and make sense of all of the accounting and the accounting jargon and really the technical things to boil it down to an easy way of understanding. The next service that we do is corporate intelligence. So as the name suggests, it's all around intelligence. So here we have a network of ex-intelligence professionals around the world, but we also do a lot of work ourselves here from Switzerland. So typically when one company buys another company, you do your financial due diligence. But in these days, financial due diligence is often not enough because you would like to really know what you are buying. Is the company that you are buying, are they involved in any other litigation by themselves? Do they have a bad track record in the environment? How do they treat the employees? How do they actually deal with their clients and their suppliers? And do they have dealings with sanctioned entities? So it's really taking a lot of intelligence out there and breaking it down and going through all the mess in it to a easy and understandable manner for our clients to make their decisions. We have sort of crisis preparation and management. And here it is typically you have a crisis as now with the COVID crisis. So you would have companies that's come up from nothing and they all of a sudden have a crisis. Their accounts are in arrears. They do not know who do they owe money to, who are they owing from, where are their shipments in the world, are they reaching their customers? And we come in and we calm things down and provide the company with this sort of a short-term support to managing their crisis. It can also go the other way where a company is not growing, but where they are declining and a lot of people might be out of work and all of those things. And we then also come in and help manage that crisis. Because as you can imagine, if you have to deal with 1 or 2 or 3 incidents a month, you can do that as a company, but now all of a sudden you have thousands to deal with. The next part is fraud, risks, and controls, and that is sort of on our prevention. And what happens here is a client would say, can you please come in and see if we have any risks in the way that we move our gold from the factory or the furnace to the airport to the refinery? And we would go physically out to the mines and then do a security inspection. But we would also do it on paper to see where's the vulnerabilities for the mines. Do they need 2 signatures before the gold is loaded? Do they weigh the gold before and after it is loaded and then again unload it? How do they calculate what it is worth? What do they communicate to the insurance? And we go in there and identify the gaps and then recommend how the companies can, plug those gaps. Intellectual property and licensing, obviously that's always a big topic. And also it also goes to a lot of media and marketing, right? So you take out some ads, you are a company that sells maybe a bottle of water, and at the end of the month, you get an invoice for all the times that your bottle of water has been on television, or that there's been a poster next to the railway, or it's been in a magazine. And our job here is really to go in and to go see, okay, was your bottle of water really on the television 50 times and in the time that you specified? Was it really up next to the Bahnhof when you needed it to be there and in all of the magazines? And in the end, we come in and we give a number. We would say, out of the 47 times that you wanted your label out there, it was only out of the 44 times. But those 44 times, you had more exposure than your 50 times. And then you can go back and have peace of mind that you did actually get the exposure that you were looking for. Second last one is financial crime. So financial crime is for me always something that has to do with a financial institution. And here we do a lot of anti-money laundering work and know your client work on behalf of the larger financial institutions, the banks and the likes. So as you can imagine, a typical bank has thousands of clients, and every day you might have more and more clients. And with Switzerland being such an attractive destination for people's money and their assets, a lot of people want to get their money here. But the laws say we have to make sure that we know where it comes from, that it's not tainted in any way. And we help the banks on that side design their procedures, but also go into the client files to see, are the files up to date? Can the bank still say where the funds coming from? And also on the payment side, where are the funds being sent? Is the bank being used as part of a criminal enterprise without it knowing? And we come in and we help on that part. And probably the most interesting part these days is forensic technology solutions. So there we get back to the CSI, I would say, of the world. And here it is really our people going out and collecting laptops and cell phones, GPS data from various devices, servers, networks, and imaging it. So imaging basically means making an exact copy for us to then further analyze. And we would be able then to go into the cell phone and see who was a suspect communicating with, where were they? So were they with another suspect when a fraud happened? So if you, for instance, taking it back to theft of gold or oil, were the two suspects at the terminal when the oil went missing? But also, people use their phones and their laptops for so many more things these days, and unknowingly, they always leave a trace. And our people are trained into looking for those traces. And they always say, if you think it's deleted, it's probably not deleted. And in our lab here in Switzerland, we typically have cases where we have to analyze 2, 3, 4, 5 terabytes of data, and we are only looking for one email or one transaction. And our people are here very skilled at doing that, is putting together the infrastructure, setting up how the searching works, and giving people like me, which is an accountant and a lawyer, just the 5 or 10 relevant emails that I need to look at for the case. So it's moved on quite a bit from when I started my career, when you had to sift through pieces and boxes of paper, to today, when you can look into history within a matter of seconds. I think that also ties into the unpredictability of what we do. So in my job, no 2 days are the same. And as I say, we are very opportunistic. I've had a case where I was in London on a Friday for a stock standard arbitration. On the weekend, I was in Ireland for something else. And on the Sunday night, I flew to New Zealand. I worked for 2 days in New Zealand on a fraud case, had interviews, inspected a building that was way behind schedule, and then I flew back. And that is 1 week. And then in another time, I could spend 2-3 months only working from the office on one case. And I think that's what makes the job so exciting, is that you never know what is going to come up tomorrow. And you get exposure to a lot of different industries and also competencies. So I can really honestly say I've worked in every single industry. I've counted inventory in a hospital, what that might entail. Like I said, I've worked on the mines. I've been into boardrooms, pharma. I do a lot of oil and gas work, transportation, and it is always different. And what is nice about it is I get to see the world. So I've worked in over 30 countries, and always the way that we work is you get to meet new people from those countries, learn the new cultures, and because you're all forensic people, you have sort of a similar mindset and interests. So it's always good to go out and see how people do it on the other side of the world, but also to know that in the end, you do it in exactly the same way and you have the same eyes on it. And I think that comes sort of to the type of people that we look for. And I think for a lot of you that is tuning in, it is the type of qualifications. So as we listed there, we have chartered accountants, CPAs, internal auditors, certified fraud examiners, let's say expert witnesses as myself, people that come out of compliance, people that come out of law enforcement, ethics, pure legal and attorneys, people only anti-money laundering, and then obviously a lot of IT specialists. So in the IT field is extremely wide. You can be into software, you can be more into hardware, managing and also being on the preventing side, testing the patches. Is the system up to date? And on the other side, why has it failed? So there's a lot of scope for what we do. We also have a couple of engineers in our teams, which always helps when we have to do, let's say, delays. So one company asks another one to build a factory. After 6 months, the factory is behind schedule by 3 months. but it's rained a lot in that time. Or the suppliers that had to bring the materials did not always bring those materials on time. And then it's very nice to have an engineer with you to tell you, well, that bag of cement that was late, that didn't really have an impact. Why it is late is because when they built it, they designed the door on the wrong side. So we have to redesign and then rebuild this part. So this is the effort that is going to be needed, and then peer go and calculate how much more will that cost and the efforts, and we take it back to the contract, and the two parties can come together and decide who takes which part of the cost. So that is sort of what we do, and it is, like I say, it's always difficult to go into one area and say, my day-to-day will be only looking at intellectual property. It might start out like that, but at the end of the day, there might be a fraud at a company, some inventory is missing, and I'm there in the warehouse looking at how it could have gone wrong. My IT people are there getting the video, getting the laptops, and I think that's the really interesting part of the job. So I know I was supposed to speak for around 30 minutes and then for you to ask questions, but I think really ask questions about what I do from day to day. What did you find interesting? What would you like to know more about? Because as you can see, there's a lot to talk about, and the purposes of this is really for you to get a better understanding of what we do every day and to see if that might be something that might be interesting for you in your careers. So I'm going to go to the questions page now. Okay, so I think, what is the qualification that is needed to join forensics? So with forensics being as wide as it is, I would say that we typically look into 3 to 4 areas. The one is a strong accounting or finance qualification, such as your Swiss CPA. I always would, if someone doesn't know what to study and goes into finance or wants to go into finance, I would always recommend that, because you get such a good view of how the financial work works. The second one is also legal, because our work is really to restore and really to bring back and help clients bring back damages. So if you have a legal person in your team, it helps immensely with that work. And I know within legal, out of my own experience, I'm on arbitration and energy law and these sort of things. But if you are into law and you can do something on the IT side, IT law, that always helps. And if you can do something on banking, that always helps. So I would always say, don't go like a plain vanilla. Differentiate yourself from your colleagues, but into something that you really enjoy, that you really find interesting. And I would say the other qualifications that we always look out for is anyone that has a sort of a law enforcement background, because you understand investigations, you have the nose for it. And it is always for us very helpful to be able to be closer to law enforcement and to understand the latest trends that they see from their side. So I'd say that those are sort of the 3 overarching qualifications. But if you look at our team, I think people that started off as engineering, I think they never thought they would end in forensics. So yes, I see the questions coming in. So how did I start at PwC? So I started as a CPA out of audit, and as part of my, I think, of the first year, this new qualification came out, which was forensic accountancy, a master in forensic accountancy. So I did that side by side while doing the CPA exams, and that triggered my interest. So as soon as I could move out of audit after 2 years, I then moved into forensic practice, where I've been, I would say, the best part of 10 years now, and also started in South Africa, traveled across Africa, worked in the UK, and then came to Switzerland. So I'm new at this, so I have to click a question when I finish it. Like, So I think the internships at PwC, I can just briefly touch on that. And there are various models, but we do offer internships. I think the best way to learn more about that is to go to our website and go to the careers part and to see what there is. Because I know you have the shorter term ones that is sort of 3 or 4 months when you have your break at uni, to a year-long one where you move around the company, you get exposure to the various areas in it. And then in some instances, we also do direct internships into forensics, but that is also sort of seasonal. When we have a lot to do, then we're always looking for people to help out. The next one, how big is your team? So we are about 80 people in Switzerland, and I limit that to pure cyber, so cybercrime, and the core forensics that I spoke about today. So yes, about 80. How do you work international? Do you settle in a city, or is this not possible for this job? So no, I would say, like, I've been settled here in Switzerland for 6-7 years. This is my home completely. I love it here. And the way the projects work is you would typically travel for anything from a day or two. So sometimes I fly in the morning to Luxembourg and have a few meetings there. In the evening, I would come back and I would be home at 5 or 6. In another case, I would spend perhaps 2 or 3 weeks in a place such as Sierra Leone or Ghana, where you don't have flights that often, but you need more time on the ground to do it. We also have cases that run for multiple years in other countries, but we do not expect you to go live in another country or in another city. So you travel in between the two countries. We have a schedule set up, so it's not every person that has to travel every week, and we take it on as a team. Obviously now with COVID, it is a bit more difficult to travel. So in the past, I would do around 40 to 50 flights a year because I enjoy the traveling. And I think this year I have about 6, and they were all in January. So this year for me is also quite a big adjustment. Okay, so on the workload, I think that's the next one that ties nice into it, and that we work in different time zones. So the workload is quite varied, and that's what I enjoy about our job. So I don't have a usual 9 to 5. I work 5 days a week, and I have my 3 or 4 weeks of holiday. I have weeks where I work every single morning from around 4 or 5 in the morning to the evening late, because of the time zones and because of the workload. And then the very next week, I would not really have much to do. And like, it's always nice when your boss doesn't know, but they know. And the way it works with us is when we work hard, we work really hard. And when we don't, you have absolute flexibility. And also being able to work from where you can at the moment, unless a client needs you. I sometimes go home to South Africa and work from there for a few days, or go to the mountains and work from there for a few days. So it really depends on the project that you are at the moment and those expectations. But from a personal experience, I can say we very much keep a good balance to be able to keep us going. So what would we look for in a trainee candidate? I would say, when you come to forensics as a trainee, we would look for someone that enjoys solving a complex puzzle, that enjoys looking outside of the box, finding new ways to tackle an issue. Because I might be looking at the same spreadsheet for weeks and weeks, and you as a trainee get here and you say, well, have you tried doing a VLOOKUP in the other way? I did this, and you do it, and somehow the pieces fall together. So I think what we're looking for is maybe on an intern is not necessarily your marks and those sort of things, but more enthusiasm, a wanting to learn. I think that is the biggest part of being successful as a trainee. I think that was, for me, why I enjoy the work so much. It was that wanting to know more and more, and why did it happen, and why does it work like that, but also try and give an answer. It's always good to try and give an answer, not only a problem. So, do you hire people directly from university, or is professional experience required in any case? We do both, and I would almost say we do it in 3 levels. So yes, we take people directly from university, and that is typically people that is just finished with, let's say, a degree and then a master's or something into a specific field. I come back to that now. We have sort of people sort of 3-4 years into their careers that we take on, and then also very experienced people that's been doing it for 20 years. It sort of depends on the type of role that you need to fill. If I look at university, and I know there's a very good university out in Lausanne on the IT qualifications, IT forensics. So that is typically people that we would like us to join us straight out of university, because at university you learn the latest skills, latest ways of doing things. And then when you get into your career, you're fresh in it and you can see how we apply it in practice. So we really hire from, I would say, all the spectrums. What advice would you give to us writing a motivation letter for a job in forensics? I would say, to be honest, right? Because we get a lot of letters and applications, and what sets you apart from someone else is, for me, it's always best to meet a person in person, that you get the most sense out of him. But really, what drives you as a person? Why is solving a puzzle such a big part of you? Why is returning stolen face masks to people that really need them? Why is that important for you as a person? I think for a lot of us in forensics, we do it because we can see the change that we make in life and in society. And it is always so great when you can lock the fraudster up, get the money, and get it back into the community. And that's when we do work for the NGOs. That gives you such a good personal feeling. And if things like that motivate you, I would say put that in your letter. But also just remember to write about what did you study and so on and so on, because I'm not the first person that will read your letter, but I will read your letter at some stage. So what are our typical clients? So let me start on a spectrum. So the big banks in Switzerland, they are our clients, or our typical clients. Our typical clients are also some of the hospitals in Switzerland, the big commodity traders here, construction, infrastructure, import, export. We'll do a lot of work for NGOs, and the NGO work will, because most of the NGOs are headquartered in Geneva, but they do their work all around the world. So we travel with the NGOs to those parts in the world. So we actually have quite a strong relationship with them, and we do quite a lot. Other clients, you can have a client that is like, let's say, really small, or it's a one-person company. That might be our client, to your multinational with 100,000 employees. So there's really no typical client for us. Do you think COVID will change the amount of travel in this job? I do think so, in a way, because people have gotten a lot more used to working remotely. I think the world has jumped forward 5-6 years when it comes to working remotely. And I think that will change. Areas that won't change is when you look at sort of banking and data privacy, etc. You need to be at the bank to work on their records. They cannot send you a file always to be able to work from home or wherever in the world. So we always have data protection that you need. And also on the investigative side, we need to do interviews, and we are trained to look at body language, for instance. So when I interview a suspect, the first interview can be over Zoom, but when I really want to see what I ask him, the effect that it has on him mentally, I need to see him in person. So in that part, I don't think that will change. We will get back to traveling, because you need to be on site to see where the gate was broken or where the laptop was, or to get to it. But I do think we will, over time, travel less and cut down, but it will never completely leave what we do. So let's see. Do we have people that only focus on the technical side? So I think that would probably speak to technology. Yes, we have people that I would say do not go out and see clients at all. People just love the technical side of our work, and without them we cannot succeed. And that is quite nice, that it is for every type of personality and skill set and interest, there's a role in our team. And we have people, even if they're not busy, they are researching the latest in hacking methods or how to protect a company, the latest in when your new iPhone changes. So now the iPhone has changed. What does that mean for our business? And I can tell you, our guys are waiting for the new iPhones to arrive to be able to look under the hood and to see, okay, does our old imaging software still work on that? Do we need to buy new imaging software? Is it faster? Is it better? People that completely get caught up in that world, but without them, there's no forensics. Do you think the need for forensics will increase in the future? I certainly think so. I think from a regulatory side, we've had the banks that has gone through a difficult time, and I think the next sort of industry that will go through a difficult time is your commodity traders. I think because a lot of them are so close to financial institutions and commodities move so freely around the world, I think they will see a big increase in regulatory work. I also think with moving towards blockchain and Bitcoin and so on, there's a lot of uncertainty in that. And when there's uncertainty and quick moves, controls often get left behind and fraud gets committed. So I can see us doing a lot of work in that sort of a technology, blockchain, Bitcoin space going forward. Also, I do not believe fraud will ever go away. Fraudsters are interesting characters. They are complex. And when one door for them closes, they open another door to defraud. And that will always be there. And I think when we have a crisis like this now, I think there's a lot of fraud that's happened that we don't know about yet because people are in a desperate situation. So I can see us being extremely busy next year and the year after. And perhaps the more complex the fraud case, the longer we will work on that going forward. Let's see. Getting lots of good questions. One of my biggest achievements. Yes, let's talk about that one. I would say I testified as an expert for the first time at the age of 35. And to be able to testify as an expert, if I look at the other experts around me, they are all about 10, 15 years older than me. So for me, that was a massive personal achievement to be recognized by a court as an expert at such a relatively young age. I also think another achievement was where I managed to stop a animal trafficking or smuggling ring in South Africa. I was sort of not directly investigating that, but it came to my attention. And for me, being from Africa, animals and their welfare are close to my heart. And being able to stop that in its tracks was, for me, perhaps one of my bigger achievements. Let's see. Are grades important when applying for an internship? Well, I don't know the exact criteria, so I think it would have to go through the HR side. But I think something about grades is it always tells us about your personality. Yes, certain subjects are difficult, and it is difficult at the start of the year to get your grades going to where they need to be at the end of the year, to where your potential is. But I think when we can see someone that really puts in hard work, and really the grades are improving, it tells you a lot about their character, right? They see that their studies and their future is important to them. And a person like that is enthusiastic person, a person that gives a lot. And that is typically the type of person that we are looking for in forensics, because you would need to go that extra mile to solve a case and to put two and two together. Can you join PwC after studying law, or would you need additional training? I think there are two ways of joining PwC if we talk about forensics after studying law. Studying law, I would say if you want to join directly, I would strongly recommend a master's. Take that 1 or 2 years more, be a student. It's much more fun than working anyway. But go and study an interest of yours and do a master's in that. And then typically it would be possible to join. And then also on the other side, go do I think it's 2 years here in Switzerland that you work at a law firm and you get experience. I would never I would always recommend that. And if you are really ambitious, do your master's at the same time. Because when you're a qualified lawyer and you've not only seen it in the books, you know how the world works, and you can find your interest. So if you really want to do forensics after law, I would say do something in the business and finance field, join a law firm for 2 years, and be an admitted attorney, and then to join PwC, because you'll be able to hit the ground running so much better if you have that financial understanding, but also that real world part. Do you think AI will change forensics entirely, or did it already start to change it? It already started to change it. We've been working on AI or with AI over the last 2-3 years, where other developers have specifically focused sort of on Bitcoin, blockchain, but we also need to add in the AI in that. And where we also use AI is when we do data analytics. So a company comes to us and they say, well, we have a fraud and we think it's been happening for 10 years. Here's our transactions. And we have 250,000 transactions. So us as investigators, we write down, how did it work? How did the fraud work? And then we give it to the data analytics and they start looking at patterns. But once we have those patterns, we need to narrow down further. And that's where the machine learning comes in. So they see what I've done. They've seen what data analytics has done. And the machine makes it so much quicker to identify those anomalies for me as an investigator then to look at again. As AI is quite new, it is evolving every day. It's getting better and better. And I think AI will also help companies prevent fraud, because when the system can learn from itself, from previous frauds, it can see a person going in late at night, opening the bank, making a payment, canceling the payment, making it again, and the system can then shut itself down. That would be the ideal world where we are going with the AI. And we are definitely on that way. So there's huge scope to bring in AI into forensics. So things are probably not always black and white. How do you deal with the gray areas? So I think my boss probably said I shouldn't answer this question. No, for us, we deal in facts, numbers, and evidence. So for us, it is always black and white. the set of the facts are the facts, and you cannot change them. The circumstances around the facts, why something happened or why someone did what they did, that is not for us. That is for, let's say, the employer to decide on that. It is for judges and courts to decide how to deal with a gray area. For us, it is really black and white in what we do, but we see all of the gray areas and we see all of that has happened. Let's see, got a couple of minutes left. So how does a work day for intern look like? So as our days are not typical, one day to the next aren't the same, perhaps I can tell you one of my days when I was still an intern, trying to get out of chartered accountancy, that part. So my boss came to me and he said to me, tomorrow we are flying to the Congo. There's a mine up there that has a problem. And the next day, we went to the Congo. And we arrived, and if the first thing he said to me is, in that room is all the petty cash, so the small cash that they use. Go in and count that. So I, myself and 3 other people sat there and we counted $50,000 in $5 notes and even smaller. And we counted that and we told him, well, there's 50,000. And he walked over to the person that's supposed to control it. And the book said there was 60,000. So that was in the morning. In the afternoon, they took us through a walkthrough through how the plant works. And we got to learn a lot about how the copper goes from point A to point B, but how does the paperwork work that is next to it? So the second day as an intern, I spent my whole day sorting out paperwork, and perhaps the next day after that as well. Once the paperwork was sorted out, we started analyzing it, and we saw that the weighbridge does not always weigh the copper that goes in and goes out correctly. So the next day was sitting with the people that work the weighbridge and observing how they do their work, and to understand how it goes back to the paperwork. Then it would be another 1 or 2 weeks of being in an Excel the whole day, and then helping to write the report. So that is a typical, non-typical day. And I've also had days as an intern where I spend my whole day researching one element of law that might help us break the case. Also another day of going with the IT team and helping them for the full day to image laptops. So it really varies from day to day and in the area where you land up in or what your interest is. Okay. There is, okay, maybe the last one. When I apply for a position at PwC in Zurich, who should I address the cover letter to? Can you please give me a name, since there's no name on the advert? I would just address it to Dear PwC. You do not need to address it to an individual like myself, or so on. Just address it to PwC. Sometimes on the website, it gives 1 or 2 people that are the recruiters. You can use their name, but the way it would work through, it all gets tracked electronically. So the system in the background would make sure that it arrives on the right person's desk. So you don't need to worry if you write my name and it lands on my colleague's desk that it won't be looked at. So that will be all fine. And the people in the background that's telling me that we are about to finish. So I would then just like to say right at the end, thank you very much for tuning in. It's been good for me. The rain is starting to fall. I miss Africa, so I'm going to go inside now. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.